All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name's Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And today we are going to be talking about the recent announcement that there's going to be no PlayStation experience this year and what that might mean. And also we're going to talk about the surprise closure from Telltale Games. I haven't really played it too much, but Eric said he's kind of dived into a few of them. So just kind of commenting on that situation. And then we have some viewer suggested topics for this podcast that we really liked. First off, we have Cerez Cypher's question regarding what do we think would be in the ideal VR RPG, given the Oculus Quest, the first total gaming devoted console has been announced. And then also from Jam Gamecast, he says, what other RPGs do you think could or should be put onto the PlayStation 1 Classic? And depending on time, we'll go through some of the other comments as well. But before we get into all of that, Eric, have you been playing anything this week that you feel you want to discuss?
Yeah, a few things actually. A really cool game called Time Spinner came out this week for the PS4 and the PC. Okay. And it's another Metroidvania. I know I play a lot of those, but that's what the indies have been dishing out lately. So I tried this one out, and if anyone is familiar with the DS Castlevania titles, they're going to notice a whole lot of similarities with this game, even down to its UI. It's very It's very unapologetically a Castlevania game, down to its style, its texture. It has a different story and world, obviously, but just like even the music reminds you of Castlevania. But here's the thing with it, though. It's actually really well done. Like they understand what made those games great, and they made their own thing out of it. It's not very original, even down to the core concepts. It uses a lot of Castlevania's mechanics, kind of like a mix of Donosaro and Order of Ecclesia. Like you get these like new orbs, and you can customize them a little bit, similar to Shanoa and Order of Ecclesia, where you can put like two different type of weapons together, and you can do like a combo type deal with them. And but I will say the one cool, unique mechanic that they have to the game is that there is a past and present system. So it's two of the same map, but you have to travel between the past and the present, and you have to do stuff in one era to affect another, which I think is a pretty cool concept in itself, and it makes the game feel much larger, because you think to yourself, well, this map doesn't feel that big, and well, that's because you have two of them to go through. Kind of similar to Symphony of the Night, where you had the secret inverted castle layout that you could do that had the true ending in that. And what was that?
Well, I was just gonna say that I've seen you kind of post in some other places about this game, and honestly, I mean, at least the art style, like I think it's really well done. It's really appealing for me. It seems very, very interesting to play. I'm kind of surprised this did not come out on the Switch. Is there a reason for that? Do you know? Or
I think that's what everyone asked when they announced this game. They're like, Switch port when?
I didn't know if this was like possibly like funded by Sony or something. But I guess you said it was an indie game, right?
It's an indie game as far as I know. I didn't see anything Sony related marked on there.
Huh. But interesting. I mean, it looks great. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely worth its money. It's definitely worth $20 if you're a Metroidvania fan, or you like the Castlevania series type of deal. That's cool. I think the thing I would definitely criticize it for, if you play it on normal mode, it is a very easy game. If you are familiar with this type of game, then you're just going to blast right through it. If you take the time to explore a little bit, you're going to find you're going to find various items to turn in and get yourself really powerful. And leveling up in the system in the game is very easy. So
So
you
what
won't
about
meet
this?
much of a challenge.
You talked about it a little bit. You touched on it a little bit, but like as far as like the narrative, is it something that's appealing to you, or is it kind of like it's more about the gameplay to me and kind
It's
of reminiscing?
serviceable.
Okay.
It's it's the story is basically that an empire comes in and destroys your village of people who give the right to someone to be able to go back in time.
Hmm.
So before your mother throws you into the time thing and says go in the past and um, change things, make warn us before the empire comes, but then your character's like, you know what? I'm going to do something better. I'm going to destroy the entire empire before they even have a chance to do anything and end this cycle once and for all. And that's what starts your adventure. And then you have an event where you go all the way to the past, like 1,000 years into the past,
Yeah.
to find the source of what made like the empire really powerful. And like I said, it's a serviceable story. It's not like some groundbreaking story, but I think it's good enough to give you purpose in completing the game.
Gotcha. Sounds wild. I'll have to check it out. In particular, I really like the art style. The only thing that kind of turned me off from buying it immediately when I first saw some news regarding it was the fact that it's not on the Switch. Granted, that's kind of a silly reason to not pick up a game, but
Switch is a beautiful console. You
yeah,
can technically play it on your Vita,
right.
but you have to do remote play from your PS4.
I don't like that. Well, I'm sure they're going to come out some with other versions, but
Yeah,
regardless, how much was it?
it was 20. I think it was on sale for. I think it was like $4 off when I bought
Oh,
it.
nice.
So
Very
it
cool.
might still be up. I don't know. Now I will say I did play one other game this week, and it was released by Nintendo, so I felt tempted to try it, and other people wanted me to, so I did. Dragolia Lost,
Mm.
the first original IP Nintendo mobile game,
Oh,
and
okay. I remember I think we actually talked about that. I couldn't remember the name, but uh, yeah, it was kind of strange that they were releasing this on a mobile devices.
yeah, I mean the game from the ground up is built for mobile big time, but the
But they make
prison,
consoles.
yeah, I mean, it's obviously some other group that Nintendo's publishing, but
Sure.
I mean, graphically, it's very nice looking. It runs very smooth. The UI presentation is very top notch. There, the
Is this like a
soundtrack.
card game type thing, or is there actual like do you run around in
No,
towns or?
you run around in a field and you travel around in a field in different parts of the area, and you defeat enemies. It kind of reminds me of Diablo in a little way. That you're on
Really?
a yeah, you're on a
That's a
map
strange
perspective,
comparison. Okay.
and you move around and you tap to attack enemies.
Okay.
I mean, that's the simplicity
I
to
gotcha.
it.
So you're saying like from a mechanic standpoint, that's what reminds you of Diablo. Okay.
Yeah, or just like presentation wise, um, and or like how the game is shaped out. But the story's been pretty serviceable so far. The soundtrack is definitely upbeat, and it's a whole ton of like Japanese songs, like Japanese lyric songs, like to the
Mm.
point. This isn't a joke. To the point, they actually have an option in the settings to turn off the vocals in the soundtrack. Like almost every other song has vocals in the soundtrack.
Oh wow. Well, at least they
So
give you the option to turn it off. That's kind of cool.
yeah, I mean, it's not bad songs, but I was like, oh man, you put way too many in here. So I was like, I just turned it off and I'm just enjoying just the music in the back.
Yeah, I
But
mean, in general, I'm not a big fan of lyrics in my songs and games. I mean, every now and again it's okay, but generally I don't like it. So it's cool that they give you the option to remove it, and it's strange to use so many.
yeah, and not to mention, there's a co-op mode. You can play with 3 other people
Oh wow!
and go through a map. It doesn't have to be by yourself.
So how do you
And
locate these people? Like, is there like do you have to have their phone number, or like how's that work? Or do you
friend
know?
code.
Okay, so they're okay. So there's a friend code associated. Is it like the same thing from your Nintendo deal, like with your Nintendo profile, or do they have their own separate thing for the mobile phones, or you don't know?
I'm not sure. You have to link your Nintendo account, so it might be linked to that.
I
And
gotcha.
the ways that you play with other people, either you play with your friends and exchange friend codes with them, like a few friends of ours I've tried with them, and the other way is if you play with someone you've never met before, you can like request a friend code to them.
Okay.
Afterwards, it's pretty basic on that level.
Is there like kind of like voice chat or like anything like that, or is it pretty?
I don't know. Haven't tried. It's on my iPad, so
okay.
I don't think I can communicate with them. Maybe if I played on my phone, but I haven't been playing on that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would prefer to play this on the iPad too.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
But I mean, I rip on mobile games all the time, but I will say this one at least has quality standards knocked down.
Gotcha. So are they asking you to put your credit card number in like every 5 minutes, or is there some kind of gaming loop where you're like having to like craft items and you can kind of see where that's going to come up?
Good free to play games usually play it smart and be very generous to you at the beginning, but they mostly bank on the people who are part of usually the hardcore end game for these mobile titles. So they be generous to you along the way until you get more near the end of the game, is when they'll start hitting you with like more stamina that you have to do to participate. And probably the grind will probably be a lot more if I had to guess. But usually, like I said, they're generous to you at the beginning, and then at the end, they're like, kind of pushing you to purchase this stuff, or you have to wait.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Dracolia Lost.
Yeah.
Okay, I've talked too much about what I've been playing. What have you been playing?
Yeah, so basically what I've been playing this week is more Dragon Quest XI. I mean, it's just been, it was a busy week for me, so I didn't get as much time into it as I had hoped, but I'm still chugging along. It's a longer game for sure, but that's good that you get your money's worth, you know?
I still have mine on right now. That's what I've been mostly been playing, Dragon Quest XI, but those are just other games I also happen to play.
Yeah, so
it's always Dragon Quest time.
Very cool. Are you just doing end game stuff still, or are you just okay?
I'm in the post game. I'm looking at right now. All my characters are between level 76 and 79.
Oh wow, Awesome, very cool. Well, I'll keep plugging on it and let you all know how I go with that. But let's jump into our topics here. So first things first, PlayStation Experience for 2018. Sony recently came out and said that it was going to be canceled this year. It's an annual showcasing of the games that they plan on promoting, or whatever the case, announcing for the upcoming years. They canceled it this year because they said, like, well, we have one or two things we can show you. We just don't feel that this is actually going to be something that would live up to the hype for what this conference or show would be. And a lot of people were like kind of upset, like, oh, what do you mean you don't have anything noteworthy to show? But then a lot of people have been speculating as well that this means that they're gearing up for the PlayStation 5, meaning like 2019. That's going to be the case, because any new announcement that's going to come at this point in time, if it's going to be released 3 or 4 years down the road, it's coming on the PlayStation 5. So maybe that's one of the reasons why they were like, hey, we don't have anything really to show you all that like would get you hyped up, is because like anything that they would announce is probably going to come to the PlayStation 5. And if you look at it, the PlayStation 3 came out in 2013. I mean, if they make an announcement in 2019 for the PS5 and it comes out in 2020, that's a 7-year lifespan. I mean, that's the same as the PS3. It's a year longer than the PS2. I mean, I'm thinking at first when I heard that, I thought that was kind of absurd, but now I'm thinking about it, I think that kind of makes sense. But what do you think, Eric?
That's a big old maybe. But I mean, sorry guys, no banjos and flutes this year. But man, Sony dropped the ball badly in E3. But it's entirely possible. Yeah, the other reason that they could be holding it back is they don't want to affect holiday sales of the
Yeah.
PS4. They don't want people to like buy a PS4 and feel like they're knowing that a PS5 is coming. So, but at the same time, people might feel ripped off. They're like, "Oh, I just bought a PS4," and
Or a PS4 Pro, you know?
yeah, it could potentially be a PS5, and we are around the year span where one might be appropriate. But they have preached in the past, which I don't know if it holds much water. But both Microsoft and Sony have preached that they can make these consoles last like much longer than a typical console generation.
Sure.
And I mean, that's possible. But if we're under the assumption that PS5 could be a thing, the next conference, like next year in 2019, I honestly think they are going to announce two devices for
Two
Sony.
devices.
Yeah, I think you're going to get the PlayStation 5.
Okay.
And since they just discontinued the Vita for both like entirely recently, or the Vita's going to discontinue in 2019. I'm thinking that might work itself into their own kind of Switch console.
See, I don't know, because the reason the Switch is so successful, and I guess this isn't to say that they won't do that, but I'm just looking at it from a business sense. The Switch promotes itself like it's a console experience on the go, right? So, and they've really tried to separate themselves and distance themselves from the Switch being a sequel or the next system in line from the 3DS, right? For a while, Nintendo was saying like, no, the 3DS is its own system. It's different from the Switch, right? Because they wanted you to think the 3DS is portable. It's a mobile, specifically designed for mobile games, whereas the Switch is primarily console, but it could go mobile if you wanted it to, right? So I kind of wonder if they're going to come out with another device that's going to compete with the Switch. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it would be in their best interest to make sure the PS5 could do both. You know?
Well,
I mean, obviously you can't take a PS5 experience on the road. That would be ridiculous, but
yeah. Well, hear me on this. Now, say that you have both the PS5 and let's call this the Vita 2. And the Vita 2 works similar to a Switch, and it works like similar to the Vita also. And you probably can pull the Joy-Cons off because there's a patent for it. Sony did come out with a patent to let you release like a typical PlayStation controller to release it and hold it in both hands like this. So it's possible they could be making their own kind of Switch for it. Now, I think that you can buy the PS5 itself and it'll be fine, and you can buy the Vita 2 itself and be fine. But I think if you own both, they might extend or do better version of the remote play that they kind of have right now.
Yeah, they'll just let you stream it.
Yeah, and let you stream it, like if you're online or something with it, and let you stream it from wherever you are, and let you play your PlayStation 5 games on your Vita 2. And of course, there'll probably be like original Vita 2 titles, and maybe vice versa. You can put in the PS5 and play it on there. Or I'm sure they'll have like a TV version and a Switch version, but I think they're probably going to at least dabble into that, because while the Vita wasn't as successful as it could be,
sure,
I think they just need to push and market it the right way, because handhelds are still a very big thing in Japan. And even the Vita met with success in Japan to a moderate extent, at least with third party. Not so much in the West, but in Japan, definitely. So, I mean, it's possible that they may want to compete with Nintendo in this scene, especially if they got their own IPs to work with.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with, because one of the primary reasons I know for me and a lot of people I've talked to with the Vita was just the price point, right? And that's the biggest thing also with the announcement of a new console like the PlayStation 5 day one. I'm sure that thing's going to be very, very expensive. I would guess $500, maybe $450, something like that. I don't have any personal firsthand knowledge about that. I could be way off, but given you're already going to have that much money to fork over, the additional mobile device, it's going to be interesting to see if they did go that route, how they would kind of market that, because collectively you're going to be spending a lot of money if you get both.
Yeah.
Unless, I don't know. So I don't know if they'll hold off maybe on one and kind of wait for another, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I do think though, for sure, like the fact that they canceled this annual event, and it would have been free promotion for them, right? Like the fact that they just canceled it and said, you know what, we're gonna wait till next year. We got stuff planned for next year.
It's possible they could have announced the Vita too, but I don't. I think people would feel underwhelmed if only a handheld was announced.
Yeah, I think they said they would have like one game, and they could one or two games they could show. Maybe they could do something like that. I mean, I can read the specific quote here. This is from, let's see, PlayStation executive. So this is from IGN. We won't have it in the States this year, he continued. The reasons behind that really are we don't have ... We have a lot of progress that we're making on our games. Now that we have Spider-Man out the door, we're looking down at the 2019 games like Dreams and Days Gone. But we wouldn't have enough to bring people all together in some location in North America to have that event. We don't want to set expectations really high and then not deliver on that. It was a hard decision, but we determined that this year we will not hold PlayStation Experience. And that's basically the end quote for that. I mean, there's some other things, but anyways.
Wasn't Last of Us 2 supposed to come out this year?
Yeah, I don't know.
I haven't heard.
I know. I think it was
a release date. I don't remember.
I know. I think it was announced that one of these PlayStation experiences in 2016. I think I was reading. So I mean, I would assume so, right? But I mean, I'm telling you, I think The Last of Us 2. I don't know about that. That's been out. They've been announcing that for a while. But I think I do think the PS5's coming next year. I think that's going to be the announcement next year. Because I mean, you think about it, they could have held the PlayStation Classic till their event this year. That would have gotten some news. I don't know if that would have been as exciting as coming out with a new IP or a new game. But I mean, if they could have 2019 PlayStation 5 and then they could show some Final Fantasy 7 remake footage, I mean, that's going to get people excited. You know?
Yeah, well, since FF7 remake's probably not going to come out till PS6, I wouldn't hold your breath.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I try not to hold my breath too long, anyways. But
yeah. One thing I do hope is that they make it backwards compatible with the PS4. They have no reason to at this point. I can understand from PS3 to PS4 because the technology in the PS3 was very hard to work with, and putting in the PS4 would make it a lot more expensive.
Well, consider this, right? The Xbox One, I think it's the Xbox One S, like the newest Xbox. It currently will play any Xbox game on any console if you just stick the disc in. It's the most backwards compatible system right now. On top of that, it's got the most advanced upscaling for any console right now. So, I mean, the fact that like Microsoft is doing that with their games, I mean, come on, Sony, you can do it. You can do it with the PS5. Come on, it's not that hard.
But we just convinced them to do crossplay, so anything's possible.
Yeah, I was surprised about that, and that was a quick turnaround too. So
yeah, last week they're like, our console is superior. That is why we do not crossplay. And then next week it's like, all right, we'll crossplay. But we're still
you talked me into it. Yeah. But anyways, so I think next year is going to be a big year for Sony. I would presume. I mean, there's been a lot of talk too about is there going to be a Switch Pro version with like higher specs? I don't know, but I think we'll find out. I don't think
at first. I think they might do a PS5 Pro in a couple years down the line.
Oh, I mean, I'm sorry. I said, so in addition to the PlayStation 5 coming out with these new consoles coming out, some people have speculated that Nintendo is going to have to come out with like a Switch Pro to kind of compensate for the fact that, one of the exciting things about the Switch is like, hey, like these new games are coming out and there's a possibility that you could possibly play it on the Switch. And some people are kind of saying like, well, with the PS5, that's going to be even more difficult on the Switch.
Yeah, but the Switch doesn't even get really many games that the Xbox and PlayStation does now. It's surviving just fine off indie titles and its own first party titles and Switch exclusive titles like Octopath Traveler.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be doing fine on its own. I mean, they were just fine with the Wii when the PS3 and 360 came out.
Yeah.
So
I think
it did a good job being its own thing.
yeah, I think right now they're doing great. But if they want to continue staying in that spot, I think it would make sense for them to release something because otherwise that's just going to leave them in a vulnerable state. Once you said like before, Sony comes out with their own device and maybe it's higher specs, it can deliver higher quality games on the go. I mean, it's opening yourself up to let somebody else come in and take a piece of the pie. But I don't know. I'm sure Nintendo will make it. They've managed to stay in business this long. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they planned for how long the Switch will last and how it'll keep up with the other consoles.
I mean, we do have the Nintendo. Was it Labo? Very exciting, right?
Nintendo Labo, yeah, putting cardboard together, and I mean, I was just baffled by that altogether. I mean, it's a nice, cute concept, like if you're a parent for your kids.
Yeah,
but kids ruin everything. I know. I was a kid and I ruined everything.
Yeah, I looked at that and I thought that was like going to be like a one time like kind of like thing, like it was just kind of whatever, like just to get some, get people talking. But like they really like were like pushing that and like promoting that, and I think it's been out now and it's like flopped miserably. So
I think just the biggest issue with it, I think it asked too much from people. I mean, it's very creative and fun, I'm sure, but like I've always preached, that accessibility is the greatest thing to get someone into your game. Yeah. And the Labo doesn't really seem like that, especially when you can make a piano.
Well, that's the thing. Like the cardboard deal, it's clearly to me marketed towards young kids. And the consoles, the Switch is already pretty delicate. People have had issues with their screens breaking. But then the cardboard's kind of marketed towards little kids, which is fine. But then you get the cardboard and it's not something little kids can put together. It's actually, I mean, I've seen kind of people putting it together and some of it's kind of complicated. It takes 4 to 5 hours to build. So it's a very like, who's your target audience with this? It was very strange.
Yeah. But I mean, I think Nintendo just, we're in a meeting room one day and as a joke, they're like, hey, do you think we could just sell cardboard to people and they'd buy it? Answer is not really.
Kind of.
They're like, okay, we know what our limits are.
Yeah.
I don't think it's Wii Music embarrassing, but I think Labo is probably something they're going to eventually shelf.
Yeah. And I would not blame them. But is what it is. So let's move on to our next topic. We have this was actually a comment from one of our viewers here. I'm going to go down to the comment just so I can give his full context. Let me switch over to our screen here. All right. So Cerez Cypher, I think I'm saying his name right. I'm probably butchering it. But he said, possible discussion topic, inspired by the Oculus news of a new virtual reality headset called Oculus Quest, which is a standalone, fully wireless and more powerful than the earlier wireless Oculus Go. What would be your ideal VR RPG? I'm sure some developers can do better than Final Fantasy 15 VR fishing. Now, I did find an article about this because I haven't been really following it too much as far as like this new console, but it's pretty interesting in that it's actually the first console that's been released that's entirely dedicated towards gaming, right? Some of the other VR headsets, they either require a PC or they require your PlayStation 4, or I think the previous Oculus VR headset, it was primarily for like watching movies and stuff, but you could also play games with it too. This thing is totally designed from the ground up for video games. And what's more interesting from that, besides the fact that you don't have to have a PC or anything to play it, is that it's going to be $400, which is very competitive. So I'm interested to see when this thing's going to actually come out and what these games look like. But it is an interesting question that he brings up. Like, what would our ideal VR experience be with an RPG? Like if it was specifically designed for VR, not like, oh, we're going to re-release this Final Fantasy X on the VR headset. It's like, well, I guess that's kind of cool. But like what would you add? Like if you're going to build an RPG from the ground up, what would you imagine for VR? Do you have any ideas? Or
I mean, we can all say like Skyrim VR and call it a day, like first person view, have a sword and shield in your hand. But if I want to be like if you want to put like a traditional JRPG on VR, I think that you still have it in third person. You're controlling characters. You see the character on screen and controlling him, but I think you have like a dynamic view. Like, if I can try to motion it with my hands here. Like you're watching the characters right there. You're moving around with him in the controller or with a controller, but you can like do methods of toggling a menu like this, like while in battle, or a swipe with the VR over something you want the character to do, or something of that manner. And maybe you can create a panoramic view where you can see a whole all around you.
Yeah, I mean, I think basically what you're getting at is just like use the VR, right? Don't just make it another game where you could play this on the console, but I guess it's cooler with a VR headset. Like actually make it to where it's like actually geared towards that. And I think one of the biggest things would be really focusing on exploration. And like you said, in a JRPG, a lot of that JRPGs are very heavy in world building. So I think that would be really, really cool to be able to explore some of these villages and really find out what is on the top shelf, right? Or what's behind this bookcase, or something along that lines. I mean, just the fact that you can go and look any nook and cranny, you can look under the table, you can poke your head out the window. Like, I mean, like there's a lot of like, just like a lot of immersion possibilities there that I think would be really cool if they made a game from the get-go for VR. I mean, nothing I just mentioned screams RPG, though. I basically talked about walking around. I don't know. I mean, the only thing I kind of am kind of iffy on is like combat wise, like making that compelling in a VR way.
That's
that
really hard to do.
Yeah, especially because you don't want it to break the immersion. So, but like if it's is it going to pop up with like a menu and be like press X to attack, or like or are you going to live action? So do you have sensors on your hand that's going to like let you? I don't know. Like it's very, very difficult. I think there's going to be a lot of crappy games made before they really refine the controls down.
Yeah, I think I've tried VR before, and the thing that always gets me is that I don't really feel a response back. Like, say, like have a sword and shield in hand, and you're swiping like a skeleton monster.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't really feel that you're hitting a skeleton monster, or you don't really feel it when he's hitting you. So I don't really feel the input or the output of taking this down, and because of that, it feels really clunky and janky to me. I think if they improve on feeling the like even like down to rumbling in your hands or something like that, like a proper like feels like properly responsive, then I think that's probably the first step. But I mean, I don't know how fun you can truly make that. That's why I'm thinking why or try to get the best of both worlds. Like, let's say that they make Dragon Quest VR, like a traditional Dragon Quest JRPG through the VR. I'm thinking to myself, how would they do it? They would likely let you have your character running around and let you pick menus with your fingers to do something. And they take advantage of the Oculus technology to, let the character go in different places, or maybe there's like something you don't like. I don't know. It's so hard to explain.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the biggest thing with VR is just that, I mean, it kind of shoots yourself in the foot if you have to, the fact that you can't move in the game, right? I mean, the fact that you can't really walk around the world with you physically walking, because you're in your bedroom, you're in your living room, whatever the case, you're going to be knocking stuff over. So you really have to be stationary. So, I mean, you can't get away from that controller, you just can't. So it kind of breaks some of the immersion, I think, with the fact that yeah, you're looking around the room, but you're still going to have to use a D-pad or an analog stick to move around, unless I don't know, unless you have some fancy setup where you can kind of like a room devoted all to just VR. You know, I don't know.
I mean, this is why I'm really not looking forward to VR or not even really interested in buying it, because I feel like it's so limited in what it can ultimately it's limited in what it can do. And like, I'm just like, even right now, I'm trying to think of how you can make like a typical video game look good on the Oculus. And I'm like, I can't think of anything to do without putting you in first perspective, which just seems off to me, which is why I've preached in previous episodes about this. But again, I think they should focus on AR technology and not VR technology. Augmented reality is where you can really expand what you can do with games. And augmented reality, for people who don't know, is that you see items or like visions of something like in the real world, not in a virtual world. So like with say you put the Google glasses on, you could see like a little character dance on your desk if you want to. And it's really cool how they showed it off. They actually had a whole Minecraft board on the table, and a guy demonstrated picking like a block off and like putting the block somewhere else with his fingers on that table. And I thought that's really cool. And I'm thinking to myself, you could put like a tactical game, and you could have like it like have like fit to like a certain part of the square, like on the table, and you can see from like any angle. You can walk around the table and look at like different angles of the fight, and you can decide tactically what to do. Or other games, you can do this also. And yeah, I mean, like the possibilities of what you could do with something like that is like just really awesome. But then back to VR, it's like you're stuck in whatever like first person perspective interaction type of game that you're stuck with. And again, I just feel like that's just limiting.
Yeah. I do think if they were going to make a VR RPG, though, I do think it would have to be something like we said earlier, like kind of Skyrim-ish. I don't know, a JRPG. Like I would love for there to be a VR JRPG that would be immersive, but I just think with like your whole cast of characters and the fact that JRPGs tend to be some sort of turn-based game or kind of like a mixture of it, besides like Tales games, but even those games it requires a lot of turn-based elements, I think. Well, not really, it's not really turn-based, but like a menu interface type deal. I mean, I think it would have to be more action-oriented, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could see like an exploration type game, or like maybe even like a Zelda game would work really well, I think, if you did it correctly. But
it would basically become Skyrim if you just put yourself in first person Zelda.
yeah. I mean, that is true. You want to see Link. You don't want to be first person. So
yeah, I mean, I'll just say this. I'm sure there is a way to translate these RPGs over the VR. I am just not smart enough to think of what.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, you could transfer all RPGs to VR, and you could just keep it as the same experience, right? Where you use the controller, and realistically, it's just like having a giant screen connected to your head, where you turn your head and that kind of moves the screen. And like if that's the extent of the VR experience, that's kind of lame. But I guess that might be better for some people than looking at your TV screen. But if you actually want the VR experience, I don't know. But I've never used VR, so maybe with this new Oculus Quest console that comes out, I don't know when, but they already have a price on it. Maybe I'll get a chance to kind of check that out. I mean, it is in a reasonable price range. Some of these other VR headsets have been outrageously priced, or you needed like a 4K PC or something else. But the fact that I do think this is a good direction to go in with the Oculus Quest, and that it's self-contained, right? So anybody could buy it. You don't have to connect it to your PlayStation. You don't have to connect it to your PC. Like, it's supposed to be self-contained, which I think is a really, really good idea. That makes me wonder how well it's going to do it. Because I'm sure having that assistance from a console or a PC really ups the quality. But I think that's the correct way to go. So it'll be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't even keep that thing on for me for more than 15 minutes. How do they expect me to play like an 80 to 100 hour RPG?
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
Let's transition. I almost forgot. Telltale Games. They recently closed, or they filed for bankruptcy. I know they had like 200 employees or something like that, and they laid off all of them except 25 of them. And it was very, very sudden, because if you go back to their website, like 10 days ago, they were still advertising for their next game or episode for The Walking Dead. And they're like, it's coming out on this date, like, be excited. And then like 4 days later, they announced they're closing down, and the possibility of this episode is kind of up in the air. And it's got a lot of people with a lot of mixed emotions. A lot of people really enjoy Telltale Games, and they're kind of upset that they're not going to continue making these games. But then other people are really upset about the fact that a lot of these workers got canned without any kind of severance, without any kind of warning. And some people have speculated that since the Telltale Games has come back out and said they received additional funding, they're going to finish the last Walking Dead episode. That some people are saying, well, that's illegal. Like, you just fired 175 people and you're not paying them anything, but then you found funding and now you're making another product. I don't have answers to all these questions, but what are your thoughts?
Look, let me correct you at the ending part there. From what I've heard, that they do not have the means to finish the third and fourth episode yet, or the remaining episodes of the final season of The Walking Dead. I think they're currently seeking a different publisher to bring out those last three games. Is what I've heard last. They've already taken The Walking Dead off the store, like the digital store, from what I've heard. And I think they're trying to get a different publisher to get the remaining three before they completely go out.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I saw, was that, like, I guess they didn't find someone to completely fund it, but they found some money enough to hire someone else to finish it.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But
now, to no one's surprise, Telltale's getting sued by a couple employees at the company because they weren't giving the law says that if you run a company with more than 100 people, you have to give a form of notice, like I think it was 60 days notice, that your company is shutting down and that you need to start looking for new jobs within the 60 days. And that's the leverage that they are using to sue the higher ups at Telltale. Obviously to get some money, because I mean, if you didn't get severance and someone just came in and said you have a half hour to get your stuff out of the door,
which is exactly what they did,
and these people without money, I mean, I can feel for them. I mean, they're in a really cruddy situation right now, and honestly, I hope each of them find like a really good job at another video game company. But this is currently what they're dealing with, and Telltale definitely did handle it the wrong way of letting them go. So this is kind of just like, I feel like it's kind of like a natural response to what would happen. And Telltale can defend this if they prove that they did not see this foreclosure coming. If they can prove that, like, someone just came in and said they're bankrupt and they immediately have to get people out without their knowledge. So that's where an investigation has to start and find if they were aware of this was happening or not. And that's depending on if the CEOs of Telltale are in big trouble right now or not. But it is a shame that the company itself is going out. I did really enjoy the Walking Dead series. I was going to wait till the whole season came out for the final season of Walking Dead and play it. I enjoyed the first two seasons. Tales from the Borderlands was a really good time. That was a good story. And the Back to the Future one was really fun. It felt like an actual sequel to Back to the Future. So they definitely did make some good ones. And I believe Jim Sterling pointed this out. And I do agree with him that a big issue with Telltale games is while they're good, they never really did anything to evolve beyond what they were already doing. And because of that, like the concepts were always the same, that you could like pick your choices, occasionally like solve like a puzzle and then go to the next thing. But it never really went beyond that. So because of that, it started feeling like a little stale. And the other thing is that they were taking in so many IPs and working on so many projects at once. It got to the point that the game started feeling really saturated, and people are just like couldn't keep up with everything they were making anymore. Like recently, they made a Guardians of the Galaxy, a Game of Thrones, a Batman, a Minecraft story. I mean, there was just so much they released, and they were planning on releasing a sequel to Wolf Among Us.
Mm-hmm.
And they had, what was the other game they had lined up? They had a Stranger Things game lined up.
Yeah, which apparently is not happening anymore.
Yeah, and the thing is, from what I heard, their sales weren't that great on these games, so it's not too surprising that they kind of bit off more than they could chew.
Yes, from what I saw, the only thing that was actually making them a substantial amount of money was the Walking Dead series. There was a lot of people that enjoyed a lot of the other ones, but like sales wise, the Walking Dead series was just absolutely killing it compared to the other ones. And that's, that can only keep you afloat for so long. And a lot of people, like you said, agreed with you as well. Like, hey, like I got into the Walking Dead, but I'm gonna wait till all these episodes are out and then I'm gonna dive in. I don't like waiting. And I kind of got the idea that they pretty much needed money from like episode 3 to pay for development of episode 4. Yeah. So when people are waiting, they have a hard time with it.
But. And here's a real downside to making more of a like interactive story than a game, is that people put this up on YouTube, and you can watch the entirety of the game on YouTube. Like even if it's choices you don't agree with, like there's like different YouTube movie versions where it's like you made all the good conscious choices, and there's like all the you've made the bad wrong decision choice like versions on YouTube. You can just go watch them. I mean,
yeah, that's the thing too. Like your content's out there for free, basically. So one thing I did find interesting regarding this was a lot of publishers or just studios have reached out and said they're going to hire a lot of these people to kind of offset this. So Ubisoft said meet us. Well, they released a tweet that said meet us next Monday on the patio at BJ's and whatever, and we'll start talking about job opportunities over some drinks and food. And there's been a couple other places that have said something similar. And I do think that's cool that some of these other companies are reaching out to try to like kind of offset the heartache or the difficult situation. But from what I saw, a lot of this seems to kind of spur from the fact that they thought they had funding secured through Lionsgate, but then at the last minute that fell through, and that ended up not happening. And suddenly the CFO was like, well, I thought for sure we were going to have that, and now we don't have enough money to pay the bills next week. And it's so strange that like that's crazy that like you're a company living like that close to the edge, so
yeah, well, I'm glad the other companies are acknowledging this and looking into hiring them, because there is some real talent over at Telltale.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that. I mean, like, there's just like tremendous talent over there, and any company would be, in their benefit to have them on their team.
Yeah, and a lot of people have kind of pointed that out too. Was that when they're outsourcing these remaining episodes, that maybe the storytelling isn't going to be quite up to par with what the original vision was. So it'll be interesting to follow this and see where it goes.
I mean, I think they already have everything laid out.
Yeah, they have an outline. It's just an execution.
Yeah, they have. I'm sure they have like all the story and everything ready, because I mean these games are coming out like within 2 months of each other. These episodes, so they obviously had. It was actually the last episode was going to be released at the end of this year.
Yeah.
So they obviously have something planned out. I think it's more stuff on the back end that they need to program, and they can get like programmers from a different publisher to come in, see what the code is, and maybe some other animators who understand what it is. And I mean, it's possible for another publisher to come in and help like finish what they started. And Walking Dead is a title that I think will sell very well. So I think at least one publisher may jump in and say, yeah, let's finish it off. And let's just get the money from it.
I'm kind of surprised that no larger company has come in and said, you know what, I'm just gonna you're filing bankruptcy? Huh. I'll just buy the whole company. You know?
Yeah, usually people buy it out.
I'm surprised like even like somebody like EA with all their resources hasn't come in and just said, you know what, this has promise, but you guys suck with handling money. We'll fix this.
You guys will shut down faster than we'll shut you down.
Yeah. Anyways, it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. If you got some comments regarding that, or if you have some suggestions for some great Telltale games that you enjoyed outside of the Walking Dead series, let us know in the comments, and we will talk about that some and possibly play one. So if we can, I don't know what's happening with these games. Are they still going to be available somewhere, you think? I don't know.
I only own 3 of them. No, 4 of them if you count season 2 of Walking Dead. So
because they're all digital downloads, right? You can't go out and buy hard copies of these things.
You can, of the ones that some you can.
Okay.
I know the Walking Dead has physical versions. I'm not sure if the other games do. Back to the Future has a physical.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. Moving on though, we have our final topic here. We have it from Jam Gamecast, and he's remarking to our last episode. He said, "Good episode, but here's a question: what other JRPGs do you think could or should be put onto the PS1 Classic? Keep up the great work. Really appreciate that. I just want to give a happy birthday out to Matt there. He released a recent video with a lot of his birthday pickups, so you should go check it out on his YouTube channel, Jam Gamecast. But anyways, this is a great question. What other JRPGs do you think we should or could put on the PS1 Classic? I think that's a big distinction between could and should. I think if you said should, my list or games would be very different than could, right? Because when you say could, that implies, what do they could actually get licensing for these games? Is there enough space for these games? Would the PS1 Classic just be a JRPG machine? But I mean, let's just go with like what we would want to be on there. Already we know Wild Arms and Final Fantasy VII are going to be on there. I would personally like to see pretty much any Square Enix RPG game on there. So we're including Dragon Quest VII. I think that would be awesome. I think any of the Xenogears, Vagrant Story, Final Fantasy Tactics, all the Final Fantasies. I would like to see the prequel to Shadow Hearts, Kildeka on there. Eric, you want to jump in here?
I think a given would be Legend of Dragoon, especially since it's owned by Sony.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any. The only reason I think that wouldn't be on there is because it's a giant game. But at the same time,
Final Fantasy VII is a giant game.
Yeah, but like, dude, it would be a crime releasing the PS1 Classic without that game on there. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the fact that Sony would not have to pay anybody anything to put it on there is a huge support of it.
I'm with you that Final Fantasy Tactics is definitely a contender. I do have a feeling that the Japanese lineup and the American lineup are going to be different.
Yeah, so, that's what we've seen. That's what they said. They will be different in the games they offer. So
I'm thinking what was popular enough in the West that would make it over here. I guess maybe Legend of Mana. Legend of Mana did pretty decently.
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. I mean, Mike and Kason over at Dark Pixel, um, their podcast that they had earlier this week.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah, they actually had a list of what sold well and what didn't.
And apparently all these RPGs sold like crap pretty much.
Yeah, I was like, these RPGs not sell well, or maybe they were successful in the context of what numbers were back in the day.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's what's was interesting to me about it is, on their podcast, Mike he laid out all these games. I think he had like the user review, then the critic review score, and then like I can't remember what the third one was. I think it was like how many units sold it was, right? And like almost all the RPG, he named like 50 RPGs from the PlayStation 1. Obviously he didn't name all of them, but 50 of them, that's pretty good. And like big name ones. And like almost all of them sold under 1 million copies, except like 10 of them. And then like you look at Final Fantasy 7 and it was like 10 or 11 million. So it makes you like realize like at that point in time, how popular that game was, when it came out. But yeah, I mean, they didn't sell that many. So, but it's interesting because I think they've grown over time to be, bigger classics than they were when they came out,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but I mean, if I had to take a guess, I think the best contenders are probably Final Fantasy Tactics and Legend of Dragoon.
Yeah. Initially, like I said, I didn't think Legend Dragoon was going to be on there, but the more I've thought about it, I'm starting to turn my perspective on that.
If they work out a deal with Konami, because I have a feeling Metal Gear Solid's going to be on there. Yeah. So if they do have that with Konami, I think Suikoden could be also a contender, the first or second game.
Yeah, for sure. I do think, okay, so I think now I'm thinking about it, I think there's a possibility there may be more RPGs on this thing than we're thinking. Because the fact that like the system's coming out without the analog sticks, I mean, RPGs, especially JRPGs, turn-based RPGs, they're more inclined and to be played on a D-pad than you would need for like an analog stick than some other, like a racing game or anything like that. Like you would want an analog stick, but to play a Final Fantasy game or something like that, or even like an Arc the Lad game, like you can play with the D-pad just fine. You don't need the analog stick, it's not going to make the game better to be able to use the analog stick. So we might get more RPGs than we're actually considering,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I looked it up too. They confirmed that there is, I believe, only one game that only needs analog, and that's Ape Escape.
Yeah, that's the only game that needs analog stick. And it's like, apparently that was a high rated game, but like I haven't heard people screaming and hollering for Ape Escape since I was like younger than that, like 10. So,
man, do you know what I would really want on the PS1 Classic, but you need the PlayStation mouse for it? Would be Discworld. I don't know if you ever played that, but
Discworld. No, I've never even heard that.
It's a point and click type adventure game, but it's actually pretty funny. It has really clever writing. It's like a parody of like those like Mystical Kingdom type things, and you're a wizard and you're just traveling around. It's just a bunch of crazy stuff happens. I mean, it's a great game, but if you want to play it like without an emulator, you do have to buy the game and a PlayStation mouse to enjoy the experience. I don't know if you can play it with a controller, but I remember I had a mouse for it.
See, I've never heard of that game, and I think it's interesting, some of those odd games that require like odd devices to play them, because it's like, what were you well, obviously a mouse isn't odd, but a mouse is odd for a PlayStation. It's like, what were you thinking? Why would you make such a unique game? But it's definitely interesting.
Yeah. The cover has beautiful artwork too.
Very cool. I'll have to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
Leanne, she's kind of talking about the PS1 Classic as well, and she made some suggestions that I thought were kind of interesting. I'll go ahead and read her comment from last week. She said, I'm so excited for the PS1 Classic. The PS1 was my first gaming system. I've never played Persona 1 or 2 and would love to see them come to the Classic. I haven't heard anyone talk about these two games when it comes to their wish list for the upcoming console. Did Persona 1 and 2 not do so well? I sent a response to that saying I played number 2, Persona 2 for the PlayStation, and I emulated it, and I had a rough time with it. From I've seen later game and like game footage with like cutscenes and such that look amazing for the PlayStation, but the first couple hours were a little rough for me. But
You would probably like the remakes on the PSP more.
really,
Yeah.
well, I do think she brings up a kind of an interesting point though. Like some of these games, like there's a lot of games that are kind of hard to find, right? And I think Persona 1 and 2 for the PlayStation, like besides the PSP versions, would be difficult to find. So it'd be interesting if they could come out with some of those more rare games that are,
Yeah.
you know, that you don't see it every day.
They're good games, but they were very under the radar games. Like a lot of people hadn't heard of Persona 1 and 2. They were kind of like if you're like a bookworm of JRPGs at the time, and you knew that was coming. But I'm not sure if a game like that would make the Western version of the console. But I think it's more than possible it could hit the Japanese version.
Yeah, the only reason I think it stands a chance on the American version, or I say American version, but the Western version, is because Persona 5 was so popular. And if they want to like boost sales, I mean, they could possibly tap into some of that audience and say, hey, Persona 5, Persona 4, you like these games, Persona 3, have you played Persona 1 and 2? Well, you can now in the PlayStation Classic. But I mean, how many people are going to honestly buy it for just that? I don't know. But
there's other means of buying it too. But
yeah.
It depends on who Sony's target audience is with this. I'm thinking that their target audience are people who purchased this back in 1995. Older crowd like you and me.
Yeah.
So I think that I'm not sure if they're trying to appeal to the younger generation with it or not. It might just, I think it's more of a bonus if the younger generation gets into it.
Yeah. I mean, BioPhoenix, he's kind of in that generation too. And he points out, he says the PS1 Classic is nice for those that don't really game too much. But for people that know how to play PS1 games in different ways, being PS3, PSP, Vita, emulation, I just don't see a point in getting one. Although I am surprised they're putting the first Wild Arms on there. So that's kind of cool or nice that Sony did not forget about that series. So
they haven't, because they're releasing a mobile title, Mobile Wild Arms.
I don't know.
Sometime soon.
See, that would have been something else they could have announced at the PSX or the PlayStation Experience as the other 15 games for their freaking classic edition. But I guess that would have been an awkward show to be like, yeah, remember this game from 1996?
I'm starting to think they intentionally hid these titles so we will talk and hype about it.
I'm sure they did. Because now we can sit here and talk about it. The dumbest thing they could have done was release the entire thing. Cool. I don't know, man. I think like there's a lot of games out there I think they could put on there, but we'll have to see like an actual like list of it. Basically with me, like the PlayStation era of things, pretty much any Square game you bought on the PlayStation era was pretty much gold. Mm-hmm. So I would think anything released by them for sure.
I'll say this: anything is absolutely possible. Your someone's answer is just as good as mine.
Yeah,
I can't say if one will definitely be on there or not. It's just if we're making logical sense of what may be on there, my choices still come down to Tactics and Legend of Dragon.
Yeah, and that's good for me too. I think I'd like to see Final Fantasy 9 on there as well.
We all want to see Final Fantasy 9 on everything because it is the best one.
Yeah, for sure. But anyways, so we got some other comments, but we've kind of been responding to some of them in the YouTube channel. But in particular, Ozzy, Mist, and myself, we had a very interesting discussion. We went back and forth regarding Final Fantasy 15. And I'm kind of afraid to bring that up right now because I think we'll just go
another Tabata beatdown.
Yeah.
Not a literal beatdown.
Not a literal beatdown. Well, let's dabble just a little bit.
A beatdown of arguments of thoughts and logic.
Yeah. He was just kind of expressing a lot of his discontent, especially after our discussion last week regarding Final Fantasy 15 and basically how the game was released and it wasn't complete. And then, the fact that they keep releasing these DLCs, and it's the fact that like Tabata says the game's told from his perspective, but really they just released DLC with other people's perspective. He just really was irritating him. So I was basically pointing out to him that one of the reasons, because one of the things he points out is with like Insomnia finding that like not being able to play that part of the game. One of the reasons that I've read that Insomnia was not in the game was because that part of the game and development was bottlenecking the development of the game, because Nomura was trying to get it so where like, walls would crumble, and he wanted this like epic thing with like the city being invaded and like you had
like
to
they
escape
showed in the trailer.
Yeah, and they just couldn't get it to run on the PlayStation 4, and it was taking so much time, like with them tweaking it and trying to get it up to par, that they eventually just Tabata just came along and he said, "You know what? Let's just make that first part a movie." And once he did that, the development started to crank out. But that works. But where he dropped the ball on that is they were developing the movie at the same time as the game, and they didn't really work out all the plot points of the game. So that's why you have so many things like Gladio's father dying in Kingsglaive, but it's not addressed in the movie or the game, right? Or like all these other things that like don't really quite add up, like that are in the movie that aren't in the game. So like it's none of it was handled very well. I mean, it could have been worse, but yeah.
See, that's what bugs me, is that a good team will find out how to work with something in its limitations, because limitation creates creativity. And they could have found a way to make Insomnia work in 15.
Yeah.
They didn't have to have like walls crumbling or like all this bunch of epic stuff. I mean, we at least needed to spend time in Insomnia and get to know it.
Yeah, it could have been
the relationship between Noctis and Regis. I mean, we needed a reason to feel like sad when we came back to Insomnia.
We needed a reason to belong, right? A sense of belonging. Like when you return to Midgar, you're like, oh, I know this place in Final Fantasy VII because you spent like 8 hours there, right? So
it feels more impactful when you see Meteor going on top of it.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I can understand that they really wanted to promote the fact that this was going to be an open world game, and maybe at some point also they considered making Insomnia a little more linear and story focused, but maybe that didn't appeal to them because they wanted to appeal to new players. And one thing some people don't like about JRPGs is that they're linear, and so maybe they really wanted to capitalize on the game and being open world. I don't know, but if you want to do all these things, that's fine, but you shouldn't have shoddy storytelling also. So
your audience needs purpose, and you need to establish what is truly at stake. You okay there?
Yeah, I'm fine. Now, if after all the events of Final Fantasy, I almost died there.
Yeah,
Tabata is poisoning my water. But if at the end of Final Fantasy 15, if we returned and we had to battle our way to the gas station, and then we had a final showdown with Arden by the fuel pumps, that might have been a little more impactful. Because we started the game and spent so much time at that damn gas station. Obviously, I'm joking a little bit, but
all you need to do is have Noctis experience the events of Kingsglaive, and him and his 3 other companions escape the city. And that's after when Regis says, "You need to go find Luna. Luna is the key to everything, and she has the ring. Like, you need to go find her." After the whole tragic event happens, and Noctis' crew escape, and that's where you can start the road trip.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we can go on and on, but I mean, I think they, at the very least, they should have coupled Kingsglaive with the game. I mean, I don't know. Ideally, if they had to cut Insomnia out in some way, they could have had like a nice Final Fantasy 12 like introductory sequence really like kind of like a long one that kind of broke you into the game. Let you walk around the city for a little bit, like an hour, and then that's it. Push you out into the open world. Wish you luck. You know?
Yeah, I mean, most Final Fantasies successfully establish everything for you and lets you know what's at stake when, you know, you get more closer to the end of the game.
Yeah. Yep. So, but interesting stuff. And I'm actually getting kind of excited for next year's DLC, even though I think the fact that some of it's not going to be like, it's going to be optional timelines and stuff. I'm actually excited for all that stuff to come out and finally replay the game again for a third time. And I'm going to be playing it on the PC. So that gives me reason to save up and upgrade my PC, which I'm going to have the ultimate Final Fantasy 15 experience. So hopefully it lives up to its name.
A game that's barely passable.
Yeah. Hopefully it's a new experience. So I don't know. I'm sure it's got to be better than without all the DLC. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, that's wraps up this episode of this week's podcast. We really appreciate you all listening. And if you are watching our episodes on YouTube or you're listening to us off iTunes or whatever the case may be, go to our YouTube page, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. We've noticed our counter has been a little stagnant lately. For a while there, we're getting at least a couple subscribers every few days, but it's been kind of mellowing out a little bit. We want to make sure that thing keeps going up so that way we can get more people in here and we can get more suggestions. And, you know, who knows, we might start making some more videos. That's the plan anyways, eventually. So, again, appreciate everyone listening, and we'll catch you all next week. Thank you, guys.
Take care.